Hey everybody, Bunginator here. Today we're taking a look at Easy Red 2, a game I randomly discovered on Steam while desperately looking for a World War II game to scratch that single player itch I've been craving. Released November 10th, 2020, as the 7th game created by Corvo Studio, a small indie team who also made, obviously, Easy Red 1 and Animal Fight Club? What the fuck? Never mind. I've been obsessed with Easy Red 2 for a few weeks now, and was surprised that I'd never heard of it. A new DLC came out, March 28th, set in Shanghai and Nanjing, so stay tuned for that. Easy Red 2 features large-scale battles with infantry, tanks, and planes, where you and your team of AI fight the other team of AI. You can have actual players on both sides, but I've only played by myself and alongside some friends. Even if I did want to try online multiplayer, it's a little dead, but we won't get into that. Anyhow, the game features 11 campaigns of varying length, all but 2 of them are set during the Second World War. I'll do a brief overview of each campaign shortly, but first, we'll go over how the gameplay works, and differs from other games of similar variety. First off, the game modes. There are only 2, Attack and Defend, and Frontlines. Attack and Defend is pretty simple. One side attacks, has to capture 1 to 3 objectives to move on to the next sector, and they have a limited amount of lives to do so. The defenders must stop them. Basic stuff. Frontlines is similar to Frontlines in Battlefield, or Hell Let Loose's Warfare. Both sides start attacking the same one objective, and go back and forth depending on who takes the point. This mode can have some of the highest casualties in the game because neither side has a limited amount of lives. Next up, the gameplay. After picking your faction, you can choose infantry, tank, or plane, and obviously not every map has all of them. For infantry, you pick a squad, sometimes an ordinary squad, or anti-tank, depending on the map. You get to choose which squad member to be, but most of the time, squad leader is the best because you can order around the AI in your squad. But oftentimes, when defending, playing the machine gunner is quite crucial to winning. The squad leader can call artillery on certain maps, and the radio man actually has to call it in manually. Tank gameplay is interesting. You can choose any member of the tank, and use the arrow keys to pick which part you're controlling. Any part you're not controlling, the AI will do. There are very few cases where you shouldn't control the turret, as you can drive the tank from any position, so there's no point not to. Although the AI in the commander seat will keep putting markers down for telling you what to do, which is a little annoying. Being the tank on some maps is vital to winning, or at least makes it much easier. Fully AI tanks are something to behold, but we'll get to that later. Tank physics are weird. Usually they drive fine, but one weird bump on an object and they can almost flip. It's more funny than anything most of the time. Finally, the planes. I spent by far the least amount of time in them, mostly because when you're in single player, it's much more necessary for you to be on the ground helping on objectives instead of just bombing here and there and leaving it to the AI. The planes are, interesting to fly, I should say. They shake weirdly, and when you're bombing, you can almost float over the battlefield at like 1 kilometer per hour. It's great. When playing with a friend, having one player bombing while the other attacks or defends is very powerful, especially on defending maps where the attackers get a lot of tanks. Now for some issues with the game. Don't get me wrong, I'm not bashing the game. It is a small studio after all. I'm just pointing them out. I've noticed the AI in attack and defense are much better at attacking than defending most of the time. Attacking AI will advance from different directions, often partially encircling the objective, while defending AI just stand there and get shot. Sometimes the objective has enough windows or stone walls or sandbags for them to sit behind. The AI like to find spots to sit behind. If they don't, they just stand in the open. AI vehicles are also strange. Sometimes I'll find myself in a tank duel with an AI tank and he'll shoot me through a bush and shit on me. But other times I'll watch a friendly and enemy tank fighting as an infantryman, and they'll run into each other with their turrets facing the opposite way. It makes 0 sense. Trying to play as an infantryman with an AI tank on your team can often handicap you quite severely. Remember when I said that infantry squad leaders can sometimes call artillery strikes? Yeah, well, the AI can do it too. And I don't know if it's because all the AI squad leaders are calling it in as soon as it is refreshed, but I can never seem to call it in as a squad leader. It just gets randomly cancelled every time. Also, speaking of artillery, yeah, you die to it all the time. Often it's friendly. It's not uncommon to watch friendlies or enemies' artillery rip their own guys apart because the AI calls it way too close. It is both funny and horrifying. But if you get a map where the attackers get battleship bombardments, watch out. For some reason, when occasionally you have to switch back to a squad member who uses magazines instead of just a regular pool of ammo, they'll only have 3 or 4 of their magazines instead of all 6 or 8 of them. I don't know how they lose them, but they lose them, and it's a little annoying sometimes. Also, the AI absolutely suck with flamethrowers. They consistently kill themselves and all the friends around them, literally every time. It kind of needs to be fixed pretty badly. After firing the last round in a bolt-action rifle, your character fully cycles the weapon, then reloads instead of just pulling the bolt back when you're empty and reloading. Little small thing. And while you're racking that last time, you can see bullets in the gun even though you're empty. Lastly, and this isn't really much of a bug or anything, shooting wounded and surrendered enemies is totally a thing, and no, there's not any consequences. But enough of that. Time for the main event, the campaigns. Like I said, it'll be an overview, not level by level, thank God, that would take hours. One small thing to note is that each campaign level is part of one giant map for that campaign, so for the levels, you're actually fighting on different parts of that virtual recreation of the battlefield. Pretty cool. You can also create your own levels, picking the map, factions, objective locations, and everything. So if that's your kind of thing, all the tools are here at your disposal. In every level, you can play as either faction. And the main menu gives you a little check mark on either flag to show you which faction you've completed it as, which helps with completion. We'll be going through the campaigns in order on the menu, not in order of addition to the game. Also keep in mind that Anzio and Kawajalin's level screens say rework soon. I don't know how long that's been sitting there, but these are subject to change. First up, Tunisia. One of the longer campaigns in the game, it features 6 factions, the British, Americans, French, New Zealanders for the Allies, and the Germans and Italians for the Axis. 13 levels in total, it takes place from November 19th, 1942 to May 11th, 1943. Plenty of deserts and North African towns to fight in, and sees the Allies on the attack for the majority of it. 2 levels to look out for is level 3, Taborba Gap as the Germans, and level 8, Takaruna Summit as the Italians. They might give you some trouble, but overall, a very fun campaign. Next up is the Battle of Kos, and I'd never heard of it up until I played the game. Basically, after the Italian surrender, the Germans wanted to prevent the Allies from getting a foothold in the Balkans, so they attacked the Italian garrison from October 3rd to 4th. The Italians, for once in the war, actually held off the Germans in spectacular fashion, proving that they weren't... What's that? They got overwhelmed in 2 days alongside British reinforcements, 103 Italian officers were executed, and none of the Jewish population survived the war? Yeah, typical Italy. It features 8 levels, but the campaign itself is nothing to write home about. It's fun, don't get me wrong, and I like the castle at the start of the level towards Kos capital, but it's not the most exciting in the game. It features the Germans against the British and Italians. Now for Anzio. I'm sure most of you history buffs know this one. Set from January 22nd to May 17th, 1944, it has 11 levels, featuring the Americans, British, Australians, Polish, against mostly the Germans, and 1 level with the Italian SS. I believe it's one of, if not the first campaign in the game, and it sees the Allies on the attack in all but 2 levels. Standouts include the last 2 levels, Liri River, featuring the aforementioned Italian SS attacking, and the Polish capture of Monte Cassino. This campaign has a little bit of everything, and I can't recommend it enough. Although, like I said, it has a rework planned. On to Kawajalin.
Covering fire! Fire!
It is one of 2 set in the Pacific, taking place from January 31st to February 3rd, 1944. and featuring 8 levels. This and the next one, Macon, are interesting because you'd think they'd choose more well-known battles in the Pacific, but they decided to give 2 lesser-known battles the spotlight. Also, the Americans in this battle heavily outnumbered the Japs, 46,000 to 9,000. The next campaign is even worse for the Japs. The campaign itself is great. Hitting the beaches as the Marines and holding them off as the Japs is very fun. Some levels blend together and a few villages look similar, but I approve of this campaign. Also, some of the hardest levels to defend in the game are on this one, because, you know, the Japs mostly with bolt-action rifles versus every Marine with a Garand isn't the most balanced. Next, the Battle of Macon. From the 20th to 24th of November 1943, it features 5 levels, by far the least in the game. It takes place a little earlier than most Pacific battles featured in video games, and visually is very similar to Kwajalein. Instead of US Marines, you get to play as US regular infantry, and the Japs are outnumbered 6,000 to 800 during this battle. The majority of American casualties at Macon came when the USS Lincoln Bay was sunk by a sub that hit its aircraft bomb stockpile, causing 755 of the 821 US soldiers killed at Macon. The campaign itself also plays similar to Kwajalein, and the last level is cool, called Piercing the Jungle. Fighting at night, in the rain, in the jungle, is pretty sick. Back to Europe, with the invasion of France in 1940. From here on out, the campaigns are paid DLC. Taking place from May 12th to May 18th, it has 6 levels and features the fight for the town of Stone no less than 4 times. I know the town changed hands 17 times in 2 days in real life, but I still have to dock a little bit of points for featuring this same map 4 times. Other than that though, the campaign is great. The Panzer II and Char B1 are cool, but level 4 reinforcing Stone is super unbalanced. The French just mop the floor with the Germans, at one point having 4 Char B1s, which, might I add, can't be damaged from the front by any German tank, and can easily destroy any German with the hull 75. I still haven't won that map as a German. On to my favorite campaign, Stalingrad. Taking place from August 24th, 1942 to January 24th, 1943, it features the second most levels at 17. This campaign is fantastic, probably one of the best depictions of Stalingrad I've played. Featuring mostly urban fighting, as you'd expect, the infantry combat is fun and brutal. House-to-house, point-blank gunfights and holding street blocks with machine guns are aplenty. However, a few levels are in the more open steppe, mainly the first German advances into the city, and later on the Soviets encircling them. One of the only issues I have is that most of the levels occur after the German army's encirclement on November 22nd. I don't mind that some do, but the Germans were attacking the city for 4.5 months, and only 5 of the 17 levels have them attacking. Just something to note. There are plenty of standout levels, like Pavlov's House, Fallen Fighters Square, and the Univermag department store, which was the German 6th Army's HQ in the last stages of the battle. So yeah, Stalingrad is great, get it if you can. Now for the most overrepresented battle in the game, Normandy. Normally I wouldn't be super enthusiastic about yet another game featuring Normandy, but the devs went above and beyond. Getting the fight on every beach, plus some of the follow-up fighting is very sick. Taking place mostly in June 44, with 2 levels in July, it features the most levels in the game at 20. Omaha Beach, Caen, Juno Beach, Carentan, Pointe du Hoc, Sainte-Mère-Église, and Pegasus Bridge are just some of the great levels in this campaign. Also being the only campaign to have my people, the Canadians, is awesome. Maple Leaf forever, baby! On to the last European campaign, the Battle of the Bulge. Having only 7 levels, taking place from December 18th, 1944 to January 21st, 1945, I was surprised to see the same thing as the Stalingrad campaign, where during this infamous German offensive, only 2 levels see the Germans attacking, at Noville and Margaret, instead of Elsenborn Ridge or Saint-Vith or Bastogne like you would expect. Anyways, it's still good, but the only map names I recognize are Noville and Foy. If you're a fan of fighting in the snow, this campaign has you covered. Finally, the 2 newest campaigns added to the game, starting with Shanghai. Taking place from August 14th to November 8th, 1937, it sees the Japanese take on the Chinese in 16 levels. Seeing this front is so cool, and let's be real, it's a little more fun playing as the Chinese. The first 2 levels have the elite Chinese 88th Division attempting to dislodge the Japanese beachhead at the start of the battle. Other awesome levels include Laudian Charge, where waves of Chinese conscripts are attacking, Outskirts Counterattack, where Chinese reinforcements from local warlords attempt to relieve the city, and the legendary Seahang Warehouse, where 420 soldiers of the 88th Division held the warehouse for 6 days against the Japanese. Then, were able to retreat across the river into the international settlements and escape the Japanese. The level gameplay reflects this, as it's the only one in the game where the defenders have to defeat a certain number of Japanese or enemies and then retreat across the river and win. Last but not least, Nanjing. Taking place from December 8th to November 13th, 1937, it sees the Chinese desperately attempt to hold off the Japanese from annihilating their city, who now outnumbered the defending Chinese, which they hadn't at Shanghai. This campaign has 8 levels and is a little different than Shanghai. This is because once the gates to the city were breached, the battle effectively ended. As a result, most of the fighting, except for the final level, takes place around the city in villages and such. Standout levels include Purple Mountain Last Stand, Panzerzack Shanhua, and the breaching the southern gate. The most fun part about this campaign for me is playing as the Chinese and getting to defeat the Japs and prevent the massacre following the battle, even if only virtually. And that will do it, folks. All the campaigns in Easy Red 2. If you enjoyed this video, or if I missed anything, let me know, and consider getting Easy Red 2. It's about $12 without all the DLC and $37 with it. One last note, recently the devs did a poll on which campaign to create next, and one of the top ones was the Spanish Civil War. This might be my bias talking, for no particular reason, but I would kill to play that. Anyhow, that'll do it for today. This has been the Bunginator. Peace!